Good afternoon. This is Clark Neighbors with the closing markets for the week of May 24, 2013. Interesting week. Some of the dynamics as the week wore on in regards to planting progress, some craziness in bean spreads, and also as we go through the Memorial Day weekend, kind of that transition time, focusing more on the new crop. For the week, July corn was up 3 cents, December corn up 16 for the month. July corn's up 6 cents, while December's down 20 cents month to date. For what it's worth on the week, wheat in the July up 3 cents, Kansas City up 11. Soybeans is where the action has been this week. Soybeans July up 28 for the week, November up 20, and for the month, July beans are up 77, while the November only up 25. As mentioned earlier, we saw some impressive spread activity on the July-November yesterday on Thursday. Some very crazy and volatile moves in the spreads, with a situation where July beans ran to over 50 cents higher at one time in the session on Thursday to almost close unchanged. You had nearly a 50-cent trading range in the July-November soybeans, peaking out at $2.98 inversion before settling back to around $2.50 on the day. So some interesting dynamics, a lot of different theories of why the spread is that way, with potential Chinese business and or cancellations and having to do some pricing, movement out of South America, etc., etc. I don't know if anybody really knows the pure reason why the spreads are that active. But there is one interesting thing we're watching or need to consider is the amount of open interest in July soybeans right now. And open interest again is the amount of contracts that are open, both on the long side and the short side. The July contract represents over 50% of the total open interest in all the soybeans. Keep in mind, deliveries start in a little over a month, and we have the roll activity with Goldman Sachs and some of the other funds here in the next couple weeks. The dynamics and the volatility of July could be very interesting, especially with that large amount of open interest. Corn this week started a week in kind of in a funk. Huge planting progress. Planting went all the way up to 71% complete this past week. Just an amazing total. I think someone calculated out as about 42 million acres that was planted last week. That along with some pretty good weather initially this week, with the anticipation of bigger planting numbers this upcoming week, and I'll cover that in a second. And as the market, December corn broke down near the lows, from last summer, in that lows 711, 712 area, all of a sudden there was an announcement of some Chinese corn that was being bought for new crop. Some of our sources in Chicago believe that the Chinese will, on breaks, be scale down buyers trying to build up their reserves again. Not sure this is a bullish factor going down the road, but it's potentially a factor that limits or stagnates the downside from time to time on any type of correction. So keep in mind, as far as the grains are concerned, watch weather over the next week. Most of the trade on Tuesday when we come back. All these reports will be a day lag this week. Corn planting somewhere in the 85% area or higher. Beans 45 to 50%. Looks like a fairly wet weekend, especially in the western parts of the Corn Belt. There are still going to be some areas that are trailing as far as some of the planting is concerned. Mainly parts of northern Iowa, southeastern Minnesota, western Wisconsin, and a few others. But keep in mind, almost from this point forward, rain may be more bearish than it is bullish. Secondly, as we get into the early part of June, we have a supply and demand update, I believe on the 10th of June, and then the end of June, the stocks in all position report and the final planting report. Typically that's a very key report, and that's one of the next, what you'd call game changer potentials as far as market changers at the end of next month. And there's also pretty good seasonality from a time perspective, you get to mid-June, that's a lot of time where the market either starts its downward progression if the crop looks good. But as we're well aware of, you look a year ago, that's about when the rally started a year ago because of the drought. So that mid-June time frame is going to be really key. Anyone holding old crop bushels needs to keep that in mind because still have strong basis levels, even though they have weakened some this week on the corn. Bean basis has broke substantially this week. Still strong levels historically, but it's broke substantially. Most feel the crusher in the soybeans has bought enough beans here on this rally in the last week or so to fill in coverage for at least through the middle part of the summer. The question is there still some tightness on beans as we get into the second half of the summer? If so, how's that covered? Will we see imports into the East Coast? A lot of dynamics of these beans to watch. So the volatility of bean spreads is by no means done at this time. Livestock, fairly quiet week. Did see a bounce in the cattle market today. Technically speaking, after reaching new closing lows, contract lows in the last couple days, cattle market did have, looks like, a short covering bounce. Cash trade this week was steady, a little bit lower. But all in all, 2-3 things to watch as this week wears on. One will be planting progress on Tuesday. Obviously, some impact on the weather is worth watching, but probably not a significant factor from this point forward in most areas. The reports next month are going to be real key, and then again, just the timing of that mid-June perspective. We did see a pretty good technical move to the upside on new crop beans over the last several days. We feel you're in an area where in this 1240, 1260 area, if you haven't made any sales in new crop, certainly look into some opportunities there, either on some sales or call your broker to discuss some potential option strategies to lock in some downside. And longer term in the big picture, we feel that longer term there's downside in this market, assuming a good crop. So you're in that time of year where you need to sell pops, sell rallies. That's going to be very key as we go along on this new crop. So keep that in mind on the corn. Look at the potential areas we're in the beans right now to make some sales. And obviously, if you have any questions, feel free to call any of us here at the office to discuss that. With that, everyone, have a happy Memorial Day weekend, and either call us at 1-800-373-2525 or on the web on BISCommodities.com. And we are doing some links on Twitter right now, just BIS Commodities. With that, have a great day and have a great weekend.